Now we're going to install the fences for the table saw. There are two fences. There's the crosscut fence and there's the rip fence. The rip fence slides on just like a traditional rip fence does. The crosscut fence will go onto the sliding table. Let's show you how that's installed. Now the pin will actually go into two locations on the table. It'll go into the rear hole or the front hole. And typically the way I decide how I'm going to use it, if I'm going to use the rear or the front, is how I'm holding the panel on. If I have a small, narrow piece that I'm going to be cross-cutting that I can hold against the fence, I typically run the table more toward the front of the saw and the fence toward the front. If it's a wide panel that I can't reach across and hold toward the fence, I will move the table to the back edge of the sliding table, and I will move the fence location to the back hole, and that allows me to push the piece of plywood into the fence and to slide the table through the machine. And the pin simply slides right into the hole and locks in place. And the locking handle comes out here to the outside rail and snugs it in place. Now there's a 90-degree stop right here, and when we set the saw up initially for the first time, we'll flip this up, we'll bring it back, and we're going to square the fence to the blade. Now here's another great feature of the crosscut fence, and that's a production flip stop. This flip stop can be positioned any place up and down the entire fence, locked in place. And there's a nice metal hairline readout right here. This can flip over for running wide panels, and when you do your finish cut, this simply flips up in front. Your material can butt up against that and allow you to make the cut. Now with the telescoping fence, I'll read the tape on the inside. The production flip stop will be on the outside, and once that's locked in place, I can do wide panels with a lot of ease. Here's another great feature that you see on panel saws, and that's a chip breaker. You'll notice that the fence actually comes here, and this little plastic piece will be the part that comes up near the blade. And you can actually use that as a backer. When your board is up against here, it'll actually back up your cut and keep you from having blowout on the back of your board when you slice through the wood. Okay, I've installed the front fence, and it goes on this front extrusion. On the bottom there's a little lock knob right here, and that'll lock the tab onto the fence. I typically will remove that when I install it. And now that can be actually used to micro adjust. You can lock this down, micro adjust the fence into place, and then give it a firm lock to position it. Now this fence is a high-low fence, and you'll see that there's actually two pieces right here. This is the anchor bracket, and this is the actual face of the fence. And this fence is in the low position, and that's great when you're doing some angled cuts or some laminates and things like that. But a lot of times I want to run it in the high position, and there's this groove right here that can be placed in the T-nut. This simply will loosen here with the lock knobs and slide right off. Allows you to reposition it and tighten it down. Now this has a couple of advantages. I can run this long and further down. I can also pull this back and use this as sort of a production stop. If I'm feeding pieces in on the crosscut fence, I can butt up against this and go through the blade and keep my workpiece on the crosscut fence and not drag it on the rip fence at the same time. Now installing the material hold down clamp is very easy. Loosen the knob, make sure that your T-nut is loose on the bottom, slide it into the T-slot on the table, bring it up into position and screw it down. Once the post is in place, you can simply do your course adjustment, tighten it down, and the cam action gives you your clamping pressure. You typically will use the sliding table both for the saw and the shaper. The saw table here, the sliding table, will unlock with this knob. It simply pulls out and twists over and allows the sliding table to move back and forth quite easily here. This will expose the saw unit. And having a look inside, you'll see that it is a 10-inch blade on the inside, and there's also a scoring blade that will allow you to pre-score your panels. In order to raise and lower the blade, you'll need to use the crank handle. And on the side here, you notice that there's a lock knob. We'll unlock that. We'll go ahead and raise the blade up, lock it in position. Now if I want to tilt the blade, I simply tilt the blade by unlocking right here, cranking the handle on the side of the machine, and you'll notice that the entire group here is pivoting and tilting the blade. We can read the angle right here, lock it in position, and we're ready for a cut. Now the combination machine has got great dust collection. There's a shroud to cover the lower half of the blade. It's connected to a hose that goes out to the back side of the machine that you'll see in a moment. You can also collect the dust on the top of the table by using the overhead saw guard. It has this small port on the back. There's a small nut that you'll loosen here. This will clip to the top of the riving knife. The riving knife acts as a splitter on the back. This will simply tighten down in place just like that. And the machine is supplied with a dust collection tube that simply slides over this. It's a nice firm fit. You may want to install a clamp on the top of that. And then rather than having this drape across the sliding table, The machine is actually supplied with a standoff that'll hold the hose up and out of the way, and it can be positioned at a number of locations around the machine. You can put it in any of the holes on the top over here, on the back side, and it actually is supplied with a jam nut. You can simply thread this into one of the holes, and in this case I'm installing it right into the edge of the where the joiner fence goes. I'll leave it like this, clip it in place right here, and bring this all the way around the back. And it has its own port right next to the 4-inch tube, and there's a small venturi that helps to collect the dust from the top. Now while we're on the table saw segment here, there's a couple of other accessories that come with the machine. One of them is a nice heavy-duty push stick, and that allows you to help push the items through the saw and keep your fingers away from the blade. The other one is what we call a straight line ripping shoe, and that's this simple device right here. It'll clip into the back side of the sliding table. There's a small nut that's on the bottom. Simply loosen that up, drop it in the slot that's on the table. And what this is used for is to put a straight edge on a board that may have wavy edges. And for example, if I have this board and it's a natural edge on the side, particularly if it's long, I can bring it up, I can jam it up against this wedge. It'll hold the far end, and I can hold the other end either with the clamp or with my hand or up against the fence here to keep it straight, and then glide it through the saw, and that'll allow me to put a straight edge on it. Once I have the straight edge on it, I can put that side up against my rip fence and come back and clean the other side up. Now inset in the cross-cut table and the support table, you'll see that there are markings here for your miter gauge, and they're set down below the surface of the table so that they don't rub off. The entire fence itself, the cross-cut fence, is used as a mitering fence. You simply loosen the knob here for the lock, and the fence will pivot and allow you to go through and do your mitered cuts. And you can see we can line this up right here. There's 20, there's 25 degrees right there. We'll lock that down and we're ready for a cut. You'll notice that there's also a second set of markings here that go in the negative range, and that's when you're using the back hole on the table. That'll let you go negative or positive 45 degrees. Another great feature that comes standard on the saw unit of this machine is called scoring, and you may or may not be aware of what scoring is. Let's go through it real quick. Scoring is a small separate blade that runs in front of your main blade, and the scoring blade will spin backwards. It also rises just above the table, just about 1/8 of an inch or maybe 1/16 of an inch, and it makes a small upcut and a little groove in the plywood or melamine that you're cutting, and then the main blade comes right down through that groove and leaves you a crystal clean edge on the bottom. And it's used for finely veneered plywoods, for melamine, or anything that's prone to chip out or tear out. In order to do a blade change in this, you'll simply take the lock pin, drop it through here on the table, and that'll lock the arbor. There's a supplied wrench, which I really like, and it comes right on here and allows you to unlock your blade. Now this is a left-handed thread, so that when you unlock your main blade, make sure that you're loosening as you're turning the blade right, and don't drop the nut in the bottom. If you do, unplug the machine, get into the dust collection hose and pick it up. I've done that before. But simply take this off and change the blade. This is a 30mm arbor. We carry those in stock here at Laguna Tools, and you want to run a nice quality blade on your machine. That takes care of your main blade change. The nice thing is also about this, you can lock your main blade, which will lock your scoring blade, and that simply is loosened here with an Allen wrench. That'll be a standard right-hand thread, and you can unlock it there. You can also lock this one using the arbor lock at the scoring unit as well, and change the scoring blade. Now the scoring blade has its own independent adjustment. The independent adjustment on the scoring blade moves the blade from left to right so that it is exactly on the center line of the main blade. It also raises it up and down, and let's cover those real quick. In order to move the blade up and down, you'll see that the blade is in the up position. I'm going to go ahead and drop it down a little bit, and you'll see that drop down simply with a quick twist of the Allen wrench, and you have to have it just below the level of the table. In order to move it side to side so that it is dead on with your main blade, that's done with this tool right here. It's an Allen wrench on one end, and it's a screwdriver tip on the other end, and you'll see the main blade move, or I'm sorry, the scoring blade move from side to side. And that way you can set it precise with your main blade, leave it alone, and you're ready to go.